Good morning, Mr. Trower.
Oh, good morning. Yes, sir.
It's very nice seeing you again after a good night's sleep.
My pleasure.
And my head was like, you know, with all the stuff we talked about yesterday.
We covered a lot of ground yesterday.
Yeah. And I just went through some of my papers, and then I saw this article about headaches in children, and it was from 2003.
Headaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had another paper saying that the teachers in Denmark, they are on medication, they have to take pills to manage the day. And then I found another quote where I said that in 2003 I said this will be the biggest health scandal ever if we don't stop up and use our common sense. In 2003 I wrote, as one of the first institutions or organizations I wrote to was the Danish Teacher Union. And I told them that this is so important, and they can get up to 60,000 teachers and all the schools in Denmark by pushing one button. And I said, this is so because it's the children and it's our future. It's so important. And do you know what the response was from them? It's not our responsibility. And then I said to them, well, it's not mine. It's our responsibility because it's our future with our children.
Yeah.
What is the most, you can say, the most, I would say, devastating or tough thing you can actually say to, so I can bring it on to the Teachers Union and to every teacher, because it's so important that they understand this.
When you have a transmitter in the school, different things happen. Basically, the headaches, you have and this is known and is published, the blood vessels in the brain constrict, become smaller. That will cause the headaches and the migraine. The histamine levels in the body go up, which basically puts the body into shock. The heat shock proteins in the body go up, and all of this is measurable. That's all testable and it's all measurable. The heat shock proteins go up, and that causes all the cellular structures in the body not to act properly. The nighttime melatonin goes down, which means the immune system is not functioning properly. So what you have, I think I mentioned this yesterday, but it's worth mentioning again, a proper international survey was carried out within France, Spain and Germany. Gently, Scooby. France, Spain and Germany, and they found that where a transmitter was near a school or in a school, and it's on the documents you're going to take, they found in this case I think 138 cancer clusters which involved miscarriages in teachers, breast cancer in teachers, depression in teachers, sleeping disorders in teachers. And this was a proper study, and in some cases mayors of towns or people with authority actually ordered the transmitters to be turned off and taken down. When after that was published, and before I spoke at the Welsh Assembly, the Welsh Parliament, there were another 47 cancer clusters. Then nobody started studying them, nobody counted them, but when I spoke in Canada last year, I looked and they are still occurring. They are still occurring. So we know, and we know in order of susceptibility, in people who absorb more radiation and get more harm, it is always children first, always, because they're smaller, and because they're smaller they are nearer the wavelength. The wavelength of microwaves is really a millimetre to a metre, and if you have children within that size, they will act like an aerial. children act like air, so children will absorb more, but they don't just absorb more, it reacts more in the body because their bone marrow is very moist. Their skulls are very thin, their bones are very thin. So they will absorb more and there will be more reaction in children. Then it is women, nothing to do with sex. It is women have very complicated hormone systems and neurotransmitters in their bodies going through the monthly cycles, and they are interfered with the microwaves. So women suffer more than men. Then it will be anybody who is poorly or liable to be sick, and at the end of the line you have young fit men. So there is even an order. And in fact, an interesting point here is, yesterday you mentioned the International Certificate for Non-Ionising Radiation Protection, known as the ICNIRP certificate. Everywhere I have been, all over Europe, everywhere, and I've spoken to a lot of decision makers, I've spoken to parliaments, councils, planners, and I've always asked, how many of you have read it? Nobody. I have never met a single person that has read the certificate that they are claiming to be using. When, if you say to them, is this safe? They'll say, yes, we are within the ICNIRP guidelines, which is their favourite phrase. We are within the ICNIRP guidelines and it is considered safe. In fact, that is a lie. Anybody who says that is lying. It may not be an intentional lie, it may be their advisors that told them, but it is a lie. And it is a lie for two very good reasons. The first is they haven't read it, because if they had, they wouldn't say that. Well, I have read it. And on page, I think it's 554 or 553, it actually says in the ICNIRP guidelines, it says special precautions must be taken with children, women, the sensitive and the elderly and the sick. Special precautions. Not just put a transmitter up and one size fits everybody. Special precautions. Now, the next page, which is I think 554, that is the important one, and that is the one that they are lying about because they haven't read it. Page 554, I think it is, actually says that decision makers should read current scientific literature, look at what is known to be causing illnesses, and set a safety level below what is currently known. Now, if you say to your decision makers, what is currently known to be causing illness, what have you read? They should be able to say, we have read this, we have read that, this is what's known to be causing illness, this is our safety level. It should be documented. They should also have carried out a survey throughout the school to find out how many children may be sensitive, electrosensitive, how many women may be electrosensitive. So, and this should be on record, and also any school should have somebody coming along regularly and measuring it, measuring the radiation, to see if it is within guidelines which are known to be causing illness. And all of this should be kept on record. I mean, we're talking about radiation and children, you know, not giving out sweets. This is radiation and children's lives. And radiation has to be logged, catalogued, registered, and it should be available for inspection by people who study radiation. Now, they do none of that.
And we have mobile phone towers, we have Wi-Fi, and we have all the phones
All these in the
the
school.
pockets of the
Yeah,
children and
absolutely.
teachers. Yeah.
Yep. But essentially, the decision maker, which is usually somebody in the school, they should have read the ICNIRP guidelines. They should know what is known to be causing illness, and they should set a level below. Now, if they're not scientists, it's already been done for them. It's called the Bioinitiative Report. That was done by all of the experts in the world so that they can say this is currently known to be causing illness and this is considered safe for children. But any small class with a couple of Wi-Fis will exceed the Bioinitiative Report. And in fact, I think anybody in any school has a legal right to take the decision maker in the school to court for not adhering to the international guidelines, because I know the school will say we follow the international guidelines. They always say that. And I think anybody in any school could make the decision maker explain his or herself.
That, you know, I have an example from Denmark where a woman, she has 2 young boys in the school, and there's a lot of radiation. Then she contacted the school board and so on, and she's almost being labeled as psychiatric ill and so on. They just refer to the Danish National Health Board and the Cancer Institute, but they don't even mention ICNIRP because they probably don't know it.
Yeah.
But you know, that should really be taking, there you should really put it heart to heart and say, excuse me, what you're doing here is actually a legal case.
Oh, it is, yeah. It is illegal. It is illegal, and I can tell you why. Because mobile phones and Wi-Fi, none of them have passed a safety test. None of them. None of them have a safety certificate. None of them. And it is illegal to experiment on people, especially. You can only consent to be experimented on if you are over 18. Children can't. And unless the parents have consented, Wi-Fi in school is illegal. I mean, now the problem is the same as mobile phones. The problem is, and it's a very clever law, what the government have done is, unlike a drug company, the problem is, with a drug company, they carry out a 10-year test, experiment, to see if the drugs are safe. After a review, after 10 years, if they are deemed safe, then they go out to the general public. Or any food or drink manufacturer, anybody, they have to show this is safe before it goes out to the public. Now what they've done in the case of Wi-Fi and phones, they've turned the tables. So rather than the industry having to show it is safe, we have to show it isn't. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. You see, because we know up until, when did I speak to the Welsh Parliament? I think it was 2004, I think. Up to 2004, we know that there were 200 schools with cancer clusters, breast cancer clusters, all sorts of things. But if you say we are now going to take the industry to court, you have got to prove that the microwaves caused all of those cancers. Statistically, you could probably show it, but what you've got to do is show that the microwaves caused all of these cancers inside the body. And you have to take the industry to court Now, I have represented 2 billionaires, okay, that have wanted to take the industry to court. And they said, well, what's involved? And I said, well, you have to get all of your scientific witnesses, book the court, and one of them, one of the billionaires, the industry came back with a reply saying, that's fair enough, you can take us to court. Our part of the trial will take about 3 years. We will be calling 1,500 experts, and this all goes on your bill. We will be calling about 1,500 experts. We will need 3 years in court. Now, court costs in this country £100,000 a day. You know, you can't. There isn't enough money anywhere to take this industry to court, and that is the problem. You see, you have to take the industry to court to prove that they are causing cancer, and it can't be done. Legal aid wouldn't cover it. There is nobody with enough money. Governments don't have enough money to take this industry to court.
If I make a little jump from where we talked yesterday,
Yeah.
when we talk about all the control and surveillance and why governments are not doing anything. When I go back to 2003 in Denmark, when we started the debate, and see how it all processed from there,
Yep.
you know, we took them on, they were sleeping on the beds actually because it was in the summer holidays.
Yeah.
And the chief editors were on holiday, so the journalists, they wrote and wrote and wrote. It came out in all the papers.
Yep.
And then suddenly all were muzzled,
Yep.
very fast. But what really is obvious there is actually the government and the government scientists, they came straight forward and said, no, this is safe, and this is, even though there was a government scientist saying this is not safe. That shows that even from 2003, the governments have been controlled by something else.
Oh, absolutely.
So the governments are probably run today by the mobile phone industry, more or less.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when you think the government actually needs the mobile phone industry, because the government can now keep track on all of the people. You know, it's a government's dream, this. You see the police, the secret services, they can, there are different systems that can get into anybody's computer. All the private stuff, they can go through the code words, everything. So nothing is safe. They can go to all the medical records, all the financial records, everything. And it's all stored.
And you know, that also means when we say, oh, the mobile phone, we had the boom in Denmark, the mobile phone boom in 1997, where it was sold for 1 krona, and you know, where you got it almost for 3.
Yeah.
And that should really have put the alarm bell on in people's heads, because we have never got a DVD player for £1.
Yeah.
Never. But you know, when that means when they have this agenda, you can say it has been planned for 10, 20 years before, because they have thought, how can we make a system that can surveil everyone? You know, it's not just something that comes overnight. It's been planned for a very long time.
Oh yeah, I mean, in the forces, in the 60s, they knew then that, because the military had microwave, they knew then that they caused brain tumours and illnesses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nothing is new, and it's all published. So nothing is new. Maybe it's a way of controlling world population, but maybe they were just too stupid to think, hang on, this is going to affect the genetics of the children. And maybe this is something they've not looked into, is that quite a large percentage of children can now be born autistic and have genetic problems. Maybe that's something they've not thought about, but of course, when you've come this far saying it's safe, how do you now stop and say, no, it isn't?
Yeah, it takes a backbone.
You can't.
Yeah.
You know, the lawsuits alone, which is maybe this case in America, the lawsuits alone, if we win this case in America after Christmas, proving that Wi-Fi in school is dangerous and harmful to children, all of the children in America who are claiming illness from Wi-Fi, there will be lawsuits, and I think the entire Wi-Fi industry will collapse. I think the shares will plummet and the entire industry will collapse. And I think the same with Tetra. If I can get to court and I can win this case in June, the Tetra itself, the whole industry will collapse. The shares will go, there will be lawsuits, and Tetra will go. So next year we may see the last of Wi-Fi and the last of Tetra, and then other people will start asking questions. Well, hang on, if Tetra and Wi-Fi, what about this?
It has to be next year. When we talk about mobile phone towers next to the schools, it has been. I had a mobile phone in '93, and the first time I put it to my ear and I passed the tower and it says, when updating, something inside me said, this is not right.
No.
And every time since when I saw a mobile phone tower, the word Nazi came into my mind. It just, something reminded me of something else. And when we think about Professor Santini from France,
Santini,
who passed over in 2007 I think, or 8, he was almost excluded from his own lab because he was telling the truth about mobile phone towers. When we see about the symptoms he talked about in 2001 that are from the mobile phone towers, which confirm everything you say, but he's also here talking about lowering of libido.
Oh yes, that will come,
And when we see what is going on between men and women today, and how awkward everything is, and how perverse everything has come, it seems like you can say the love force in people is being removed. People are not so humane and loving as they used to be.
Yeah, I'll come back to one of your earlier comments there, when you said Nazi experiment.
Yeah.
Now, I read a lot, and I have read documents going back to, or interpretations of documents going right back, BC, hundreds and hundreds of years BC, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Ptolemy, who's a Greek scientist living in Egypt, BC. I've read a lot of papers, and I've read right up to date. I'm a scientific advisor, I think, to, at the moment, 5 organisations, which means they send research papers to me, I read them, I rewrite them into what I call simple language, I send them back, and they publish them to the people that read that are not scientists. Now, the only time in history, other than now, that I have heard of children being deliberately experimented upon was Dr. Joseph Mengele at Auschwitz. That is the only time in history I have read where children were deliberately collected, deliberately experimented on, and deliberately killed. Until today. This is the only time in history, and we are about, depending on where you started counting and your religious beliefs, we are probably the 40,000th generation. We are the 40,000th generation of human being. And this is the first time I have known a worldwide study on children for autism, miscarriages, cancer, bone cancer, leukemia, all of the things that they're getting. This is the first time in the history of the human race that children are being deliberately experimented on without the parents' consent, where the parents have been lied to, without the children's consent. This is the first time. And it's written, the World Health Organization said they started studying children in 2009, and they will not have a result. They're going to have a result in the first sort of summary in 2012, but it will be at least another 10 years after that before they reach a conclusion. So it is an experiment by the World Health Organization on children, and this is the first time in the history of the human race that we are exposing children to this. And what does it say about the human race when we're doing that?
Yeah, it has become dehuman. I normally twist WHO around because I say it's the World Health Organization, but whose health are they organizing? It seems like awkward, everything what's going on.
They are really business funded. I think they are business funded and they look after business. They certainly don't look after the humans.
In 2008, there was a study done. Actually, there was a Dane inside it, and that was quite interesting because he didn't expect that these results would come out, but he did it together with someone in America, and it was about mobile phones harming unborn babies when a woman is pregnant.
Yep.
And it was 100,000 pregnant women and 13,000 7-year-old children. And it showed that these children had behavioral problems.
Oh yeah,
they
absolutely.
couldn't bond so much with their mother, and
and in fact, I'm trying to think. I read a paper very recently, and I've got the gentleman's name written down. But basically, what he can do, he can measure the radiation that the child is exposed to, and he knows how ill the child is going to be when they're born. He's actually listed how much radiation, how sick the child is going to be. He's got it now on a table. You know, like if you eat this much, you're going to weigh this much. He's got it like that. So, you know, it is. I think what is happening when, as a human race, we are experimenting on the unborn. You know, it's. In my I have a very, very simple mind, very simple.
yeah, but the truth is simple.
Yeah, and I think there are a whole row of children in heaven waiting to be born. This is how I see this. You have all these children playing around in heaven, waiting to be born, looking down, and they're probably saying, I hope I don't go to one of those families that is being experimented on, so I'm born with autism or a genetic disorder. I just want to be born ordinary so I can play and have fun and grow up. And in my simple, very simple mind, I see them looking down worried. That's how I see it.
Can I add a little to that?
Yes.
When you have the children up there and looking down, seeing which family would I like to get the lesson I need to have, I see it as we have this electromagnetic spectrum that has been totally polluted around everything you can say, and they have to go down through that. And some of the programs are becoming rewritten on the way down because they become so damaged, you can say, the soul or the essence of the child. Just metaphor speaking.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I can add a little story to that.
Of course, everything.
And you can show this to any of your religious friends. I have one question. You can pose this question to any decision maker, and this is a true story. I was in court once. I try and represent people. Usually I lose. Occasionally I win. But most times I lose. I was in court once, and there was a break, midday break. And I went across the road to the pub, and I got myself a beer and a sandwich, and I just sat down, just whiling away an hour thinking about what I could say next. And the barrister representing the mobile industry came in and sat down, and he said, "You know you've lost, don't you?" And I said, "Well, probably. I lose most things." And I said, "Would you tell me just one thing?" And I often ask this with decision makers around the world. I say, "Would you answer one simple question for me, just for my own curiosity?" I said, "Now, you and I said, are on the downward part of the slide of life." I said, "and it's getting faster and faster." I said, "Now, I know when I was young, I've been stupid, but as an adult, I've been trying to do good. Maybe what some people would describe, like you and I, as God's work, preventing suffering." I said, "Now, when I die, and I stand before the judges, and that is a day none of us can avoid, I will stand before the judges, and I will say, look, here I was stupid, but I tried to succeed here. And I will have ticks in some boxes and crosses in other boxes. But I'm not afraid. With what I have achieved, I'm not afraid." I said, "But you, on the other hand, you take a lot of money, more than my pension over a year. You will earn that in a day." I said, "You have your Rolls Royce, your big house, your yacht." I said, "and you take all of this and you find loopholes to win cases that are going to cause suffering and death." I said, "Now, I have one question. When you reach the end of this slide and you have to stand before the judges, whatever religion, where you are naked and nobody's impressed with your Rolls Royce, nobody's impressed with your big house and your yacht, you can't take your money with you, you can't bribe anybody, you have one sentence when you look at all of the suffering you have caused. What will you say? What is that one sentence you will say to defend yourself? When you cannot lie here, they can see through, and it's telepathic. You cannot lie. What is your one sentence? I've always wanted to know that, and not one decision maker has that sentence prepared.
Please forgive me.
It's too late, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah,
it's too
I will
late.
do better next time. Yeah, they cannot answer it.
They cannot answer it.
No.
And I think if we could get that message to decision makers, maybe when they go to bed at night and they think, well, hang on, I can't avoid this. I can buy my way out of everything, I can do anything, but I can't avoid this, and this is coming towards me. And I think that will be a strong thought if they know, and it may just help our cause.
And also adding to that, I've been living, we rented a house from a duke, and then I know other dukes within this community, they have cancer. And no matter how big castles they have, how many cars, Range Rovers and whatever, they still got cancer. And they cannot get rid of it. And so perhaps some of these need to adjust their minds and see this world is not about having all these things, this is about serving, it's about sharing.
Yeah. And I think, well, I think about Adolf Hitler, what he would say, and I think about these decision makers that are deliberately, and I think causing more damage. They will be in the same boat, and I don't think they realise that.
Yeah. there's nothing more to say about that.
No.
We talk about this big experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Leif Salford from Lund University in Sweden.
Oh, Lund, yeah, Professor Saltberg, yeah, from Lund, yeah.
But he said in 2003, when he came out with the results about the blood-brain barrier,
yeah,
which was reproduced from Russia in 71 or something like that.
Yep.
He says it's the biggest experiment on living organisms or human beings ever. And here I have a document where it says stress is a very profitable market.
Yeah.
WHO said in 2004 or something that stress and depression will become the biggest causes for illness in 2020.
Yeah.
And now I think about the Danish government has a plan that is called 220 about health and so on. But you know, I've been trying to wake up people about the burnout and the stress and the depression, because I have seen the rise coming together with the all these new technologies coming on the market. I don't use mobile phone, I don't use the wireless. I'm not stressed unless I want to do too many things at the same time. But I'm not in a chronic stress situation. Most people are in a chronic stress situation due to the microwaves. Can you add to? Well,
the blood-brain barrier, I mean, the people watching this may not understand what we're talking about. It's a bit like a fishing net around the brain, and it's full of holes, small holes. It has no joins. It's a very remarkable piece of netting. It has no joins, and it forms around the brain. It takes about 1.5 years to form in a baby. But it isn't just around the brain. There are the same material is around some other organs in the body. And what it does, if we stick with the brain, what it does, it allows all of the things that have to come in and out of the brain. It allows the toxins, the poisons out, and it allows the good bits into the brain. But it keeps out the toxins outside in the blood. It stops them going into the brain and poisoning the brain. Now what happens is when microwaves come across this, it weakens it and the holes get bigger and they stay bigger. So now you have toxins in the body going into the brain and into other organs. And that can lead to, as you say, all sorts of neurological and pathological diseases.
Have you heard about chemtrails? The stuff they're spraying on the sky and so on?
Oh yeah, chemtrails,
and
yeah.
Think about all the pollutions we have in this society, and if you have an open blood-brain barrier, what will happen to the brain?
Well, I think it was Dr. Carlo, and I've met him once. I believe he's giving evidence with me in Oregon after Christmas. We met and gave a little talk in Great Ormond Street, the Children's Hospital, on cancer a few years ago. He's a lovely gentleman. He produced a paper, I believe, showing that about 40–50% of all illnesses in people today are caused deliberately by industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Or about 40–50% of all illnesses in the human race are deliberately caused from either the aeroplane or the car or drugs or food, whatever. Yeah.
I know a guy, he works with big companies like 500, Fortune 500 and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And he once told me that if I knew what was going on in the board meetings, I wouldn't believe this was on this planet. He said, it's so crazy what is going on, what they are discussing. They say, oh, we need to make a profit here.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make a diagnosis, so people will be buying this pill we have invented. You know, it's totally, people would not believe it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It comes down to money, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
we have God or money, you know, you have to choose which way you go. Talking about cancer, I have this, actually, this was where the blood-brain barrier, there's a good chapter about it. A book called Invisible Disease by Gunni Nordström. She's from Sweden but living in Finland now. But I have this bookmark I put in, and the Danish, we have this guy working, Christopher Johansen, at the Danish Cancer Register. He's also employed by the National Health Board, so he has 2 full-time jobs. And he's advising the telecom industry in Denmark as well, so he had all the hats as well, all in each color. But he said in the European Commission meeting in February 2009 in Brussels, everybody agrees that radio frequency is a tumor promoter.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Why did he say that? He couldn't lie there because all the experts were present in Brussels.
Mm.
He said the truth there, but every time he said something in Denmark or comment on a study, he said, oh, it's perfectly safe.
Yeah.
That shows a lot about integrity and ethics.
Mm. I think this is a trend you get in most countries. You have one person that declares they are an expert, and the government scientists say, we're referring to him. And this is a case in New Zealand. In New Zealand you have a Dr. Black, and he has decided, and he's said that he is on the payroll of the industry from the documents I've read, but all of the government, everybody refers to this one man, and they say, well, if Dr. Black says this, then it's true. They ignore all of the rest of the world, and it's like that in several countries. They use one person to refer to, and here, you know, it's just a handful of people here. When I saw the minister, the Minister of Schools, and I said, look at the devastation we are going to cause through all the children, and he said, I can do nothing. He said, the Health Protection Agency and the people that look after microwaves is only a few people. They have the last word. He said, I can do nothing without their say-so. And they say, this is safe. Because somebody is telling them to say, this is safe.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's, you know, you have, the ordinary person is too busy, like you said yesterday. Yeah. The ordinary person is too busy, worried about paying their bills, keeping their job, to take on the government and the most powerful industry on the planet. You can't do it. It's impossible to take them on.
Okay, that actually just means, you know, I've been putting a lot of pressure on this guy and he doesn't want to meet me in Denmark. I asked for an interview with the Danish Cancer Institute. Mm-hmm. No, thank you. Not meeting with me, and I said, why? Well, he doesn't dare. He's so dark. He's just, he's ignorant actually, because he doesn't know what he's doing, really, on a bigger level.
Yeah.
You have read, of course, the Reflex study, the European...
Reflex.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually came out, their conclusion was DNA genetic damage.
Yeah, significantly.
Yeah.
And I would say the advisor on that project was Professor Rosati, who's now late, of course. But he said,
Rosati, yeah.
Yeah, he said in the preface, because he got to write the preface.
Yeah.
He was too ill to come to when they published it, and it was also delayed 2 years to be published because of the industry didn't like the results. But he wrote in the preface to this study exactly what you told yesterday about you wanted to do experimental physics. You know, you wanted to test if you're not theory, but you want to
yeah, I could prove it.
To prove it.
Yeah.
And he writes everything here that we need. Every time there comes someone who has a biophysical understanding, how the body works, frequency, energy and everything, the door is shut, closed. And he said we should learn from the past now and really step up to the next level, because he says all new students, they are just being controlled. They don't really know what's it all about.
No.
And that's the Reflex study.
Yeah. Yeah, I've read it. I agree with it. Yeah.
I'm sure we can agree that it's very dangerous now, and you know, people should be understand by now that it's seriously dangerous and they shouldn't really be using these technologies.
We had the proof, the government proof, in 1976. All the research that ever needed doing was finished in 1976 and published in that document I gave you yesterday. All of the research was finished. We didn't need any more research. But as I said, the American government wanted to put this out to protect, really to make a profit. And they also wanted to protect the military, because microwaves have an advantage over radio waves. Radio waves won't go through walls and through houses and through people and trees. You need a big aerial up there somewhere. Microwaves will go through anything. And this is why they like microwaves. So the military want microwaves, the industry want microwaves, and the military and the industry persuaded the government to keep the lid on all of this and really lie, for a simple word, lie to the people, deceive the people and lie to them, saying it is safe when it's not. But by 1976 we knew everything.
I was 6 years old. Yeah. Okay.
That's the year I married Linda.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a good year, actually.
Yeah, 76. And we know that, and we know during the Cold War, because a part of my job in the Cold War was to question captured spies. And we knew then, because that was the time when new pulses were being tested to see what they could cause, how much damage they could cause, and people were being experimented on. And part of my job was to find out what they knew. So it was going on then. We knew the damage was being done then. And since then, it's been covered up. It's a cover up, cover up, cover up, cover up.
Yeah. When we talk about buildings in Denmark, we have the biggest publishing company with magazines and newspapers and whatever. They have built this new thick glass building with steel constructions, and the microwaves will not go into that. So what have they done? They have put a huge antenna inside the building where more companies are connected to it. And then this guy, he called me and said, well, I would like to sell you a commercial. Well, I say, you are the biggest publishing company in Denmark, you should actually support me and give it for free. Because I say, I cannot afford paying all your wages and so on. And then I said, well, what are you calling from? Well, I'm calling from an iPhone. You know, these smartphones.
Yep.
And that, I wanted to lead that to, he was calling from an iPhone, and I have been trying to tell people about the iPhone agenda, or the agenda really going on with these smartphones, because it's also about hooking people up and getting connected all the time. And I want to ask you something after this, I say now, with the touching of this display. But the Apple phone, iPhone, on the board of Apple in the United States, we have Mr. Al Gore. He's on the board.
Al Gore.
Since he came on the board with the Apple, it seems like the Apple computer has just skyrocketed. It's one of the most successful companies in the world, and it seems like it has gone the same way as the CO2. It has become very popular. Banks have now a CO2 account, and you have to do everything about CO2 everywhere, and it's so rubbish. But it just shows that there's something pushing it all the way around, and it's always, the bad things are always in the top, you can say. But the display, when we talk about these smartphones and iPads, they are connected with their fingers all the time, and what kind of impulses will come from the display? They have a 3G or 4G phone, and they touch the display all the time. What will go through the meridian system and whatever? You know, they have contact all the time with the fingers.
Yeah, well, you will have, with anything like this, you will have a very, very tiny electric current going through the body. Now, there's an interesting thing here, because when you have an electric current going through the body, it has to go through the body into the planet. Okay, so it goes to ground. The electric, in fact, in real physics, the current actually comes the other way, but people say it goes through the body to ground. Now, the interesting thing here is when you have a current in the body going to ground, it takes the path of least resistance. Excuse me. It takes the path of least resistance. Now, the path of least resistance in the body, it only represents about 10% of all of the paths that go through the body. There is about 10% of the paths have least resistance, and they take. It's a bit like the motorways, but it's a very important 10% because it carries all of the hormones, all of the antibodies, all of the chemicals that have to go around in the blood to keep the body moving. It's a bit like the motorways in the country. They carry virtually everything the country needs, and the side roads just do little bits. So you have the electric current going through on these roads. Now, what it's like, if I came, do you have an underground in Denmark?
Just in Copenhagen, just a little one.
Okay, if I came to Copenhagen and went on the underground, and I can't speak or read Danish, so I have a map, and it's like inside your body with the hormones, the antibodies, they have a map inside them, and they know where to go because they have chemical and electrical signals. So they know where to go. So if you're in Copenhagen and you know where to go with your map, you get to the station and you can get off. But if I go to Copenhagen and I have the map, supposing the map has been changed, some of the words or some of the letters have been rubbed out, things don't match, I may get off or I may not get off. And that's what happens in the body. When you have the electric current going through, it affects the electrical signals which affect the chemical signals of the hormones, the antibodies, the neurotransmitters. It affects those. So sometimes they will go where they have to go, sometimes they will miss. And that is what's happening. So if you have a long time with this happening, then the body will start to suffer. Initially the body will recover, but all the time you're having electric shocks, what you're doing is you're affecting the antibodies, the hormones, the neurotransmitters. You are affecting your body.
Can I ask about when we have all these rubber shoes and so on? Many people today, they're sold and grounded because they walk on rubber all the time. Will that have an effect too?
Not really, because and it's the same symptom we get with cattle in fields. When you touch anything metal, like a door handle, a door frame, a window, anything, then they will discharge through the body. We have the same thing with cattle in fields. When you put a transmitter on a farm, in fact the farmers found that the vet bills exceeded the money they got from the communications industry. With cattle, the charge builds up inside them, and it's not unknown when the cattle are now leaving the field and they're all charged up, if their wet nose touches the metal gate, the current discharges through them and some of them just drop dead, literally drop dead. And there have been the one touching the gate, if others are touching, the current will spread. But there was a very clever experiment in Bavaria where they found that cattle exposed to low-level microwaves, they gave less milk, and so they moved the cattle away and they recovered. They brought them back to where there was a transmitter, they got sick again. They moved them away, they recovered. Now, cattle don't sit in fields reading Scientific American and talking about electric currents. They eat grass and they go moo, and that's it. They don't know what's happening. So with cattle, moving them, you can make them ill, you can make them better. You make them ill, you make them better. And it was written up.
It's the same.
Same with people.
Freiburg appel, the Freiburg appeal.
Oh, the Freiburg.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
also said when the doctor said when the people were moved to other vicinities,
Yeah.
they got better. It's so easy actually.
It takes 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's called long-term potentiation. It takes 6 weeks,
Okay.
especially from the brain. And it's easily thought of when you have these microwaves going in the brain. It's called entrainment. And it's easy to understand what's going on. Imagine you're bouncing on a trampoline at your own pace. Now imagine a 56-stone man jumps on the trampoline and bounces at his pace. You will have to bounce at his pace because he is bigger and stronger. That is what happens in the brain when the microwaves go in. Your brain waves have to match the microwaves. They are bigger and stronger. When the 56-stone man jumps off the trampoline, you will still carry on bouncing at his pace until you can slow down and then develop your own again. That is called long-term potentiation, and it can last up to 6 weeks. We know from studies a child making a 2-minute phone call, the brain can take 2 hours to recover. Now you imagine children in a school playground on the phone. They're not going to be able to learn properly for the whole of the afternoon or the whole of the morning.
Yeah.
If their call is a few minutes, they're not going to be able to learn properly. And it's called long-term potentiation, and it can go on for 6 weeks.
Well, Barry, I have a book here. It's called The Sapping of America.
Right.
It's written by Paul Brodeur, and it says microwaves, they are deadly risk and they're cover up. It says on the front page here, microwave radiation can blind you, alter your behavior, cause genetic damage, even kill you. The risk have been hidden from you by the Pentagon, the State Department, and the electronics industry. With this book, the microwave cover-up is ended. It's from 1977, so it's the year after you said everything was, just to confirm what you said actually.
Yeah, everything was covered up in 1976.
Yeah, actually I think he was covered up too late on. I think he's...
Yeah, the blindness is an interesting one because it, the eye has its own circadian rhythms, and there are special cells in the side of the eye that not many people know about, and they absorb radiation and they can affect the eye as well, and the frequency of the microwaves can affect the circadian rhythm, the natural circadian rhythm of different parts of the eye. So it is quite normal if you're in a field, a microwave field, to have vision problems, the same as hearing problems. It's quite normal.
What about when people are using glasses with metal around the eyes and going to the ears?
Well, I mean, it's already been known that the metal will absorb the radiation, as all metal absorbs microwaves, and they will re-emit it straight into the eyes, like when you have the metal cuff under the bra. They will absorb the radiation, and they are in the shape of a parabola, so they will focus into just a small group of cells in the mammary cells, which can turn cancerous. Similarly, the eye, the glasses will reflect into the eye, metal rim spectacles,
And what about the beds? We have again beds with metal
Well, bed
feathers.
springs, anyone who is the tiniest bit sensitive or in a strong magnetic field, they should get rid of all of the springs because they will absorb the radiation at night. The radiation will come up through the bed whilst you're sleeping. That will knock your melatonin sideways, which is produced at night to boost the immune system, and you will be waking up feeling very tired, very headachy, very sick, and you will never get better, you will only get worse.
I think that's very important because most people they sleep on springs. They don't sleep on this latex or what do you call it? Yeah. we have been a lot around it all, or lots of it, and how the control mechanisms are going on, and how the government and the secret services and how it's all being done, and the US or the organization, we can say, because I believe it's overnational, it's supranational, national, so it's really the super rich of the world, or the super, but they are all interrelated on top of nationality, you can say.
Right.
But I have this book, I don't know if you have read it, but it's called...
I don't have time to read books.
No, but it's called Mass Control Engineering Human Consciousness.
Yeah.
It's by Jim Keith, who died suddenly from cancer, 50 years old. Yeah, whether it was induced or whatever, I don't know. But it sums up a lot of what CIA have been doing the last 50 years with both psychiatric means and radiation, and how it's all to actually control us like robots, or control our behavior, so we will be good citizens, good consumers, and just watching television and doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like the Orwellian superstate, George Orwell, 1984.
I wonder sometimes, I know all these experiments went on, and I know that they can induce severe psychiatric disorders by varying the pulses. But I don't know, and I'm not arguing here,
No.
I don't know whether the intention is to use them on your own people to control them, or you have to have knowledge of them in case an enemy country beams you and causes it. Because if, let's say, you have two countries that don't like each other, one country can easily beam another country and cause suicides, depression, like introducing drugs, really, and cause mayhem in the hospitals, the government, money, and everything. So one argument for this is, if you know this exists, you can easily work out a jamming sequence to prevent it. So I can see an argument where they will say, yes, we tested this, albeit illegally, like germ warfare, but now we know what it is and where it's come from and how it works. We can stop anybody using it against us. So there are two arguments here. There is one, will they use it on their own people? And two, will they use it to prevent somebody else using it on your own people?
Professor Johansson from Karolinska in Stockholm, he said to me when we had that talk, he said, well, if you were in government, he said to me, would you like to have 10,000s of Morton Julius asking questions, knocking on doors, doing videos and so on? Or would you like your population to be very docile, to be very sleepy and not so creative and so on? And he said, well, if you want to have the power, but if we talk about countries not liking each other and so on, if we, this is just an experiment, if we think that there are no really conflicts in this world, they are all created through religion, through microwaves, through biological warfare, that really we are all being manipulated, that it's just they played a huge monopoly and they have an extra ring. And we are inside, you know.
Absolutely.
That could be, you know, and therefore they just laugh us off and say, all the government employees, they don't do anything in a way, they just serve us. You know, they are cool, they are psychopaths, the one on top, because they have no emotions. They are ice cold. They can kill you and me without blinking.
Oh, I don't doubt that for a second. Yeah. But I'm just saying there is a counter argument here where they will justify what they are doing. But I mean, in this country, every single microwave transmitter for every single phone comes under the Official Secrets Act. The press are not allowed to report, technically, on anything to do with the communications industry. It all comes under the Official Secrets Act, and if you do, you can go to jail.
That's interesting. In Denmark, it's only the Tetra system that is hidden. But of course, if you know how the antennas look like, you can find them. But you cannot look them up. We can look every mobile phone tower up on the screen, see where they are. Not Tetra.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting, because I'm reporting a lot about this in Denmark and I don't get any...
And the reason Tetra is secret is not because the frequencies are known.
Yeah.
The aerials are known.
Yeah.
The reason they're keeping Tetra secret is to stop people publishing how dangerous it is on the emergency services.
Yeah.
That's why they're keeping it secret.
Yeah.
It's because the press can't say, well, hang on, this causes calcium efflux in the brain, which can cause this and this and this. We know it will probably cause cancers in the brains of the emergency services. So if you want something to be kept quiet, you just say, zonk. We're putting all that under the Official Secrets Act, and now you can't talk about it.
But you know, this is what you just said here in 30 seconds. That's really the point. We need to give to every emergency employee in the police, in the ambulances, in the buses, in the trains, all the people working with Tetra. We need to make either a little DVD or a little document and just handing out every time we take a bus. We can put it on the internet, people can download it, print it out, give it to the bus driver, give it to every policeman they meet. We can start it can be done.
We've already done that. I've already done that.
Yeah, but in Denmark we...
No, my highly confidential report that I made for the union, I've done 2 confidential reports. One, a police officer put it on the internet, and in another one, another police officer put it on WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
And I do know they are doing the rounds in the police force, because police officers sometimes say to me, I like what you've written there. So they are on the internet.
Yeah, but we need to hand out to every single one we meet, because they don't, if you talk to them, most don't know.
Oh, most
it's only the one
yeah.
who seek knowledge themselves. Yeah. The rest they won't read it.
Yeah. But maybe with this court case in June, it will come out.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been over, it's very dangerous to talk to me. I went into Europe to talk to a chief officer of the police, and after I left, he was sacked.
Yeah.
You know, people that get sacked just talking to me.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous to meet me.
I'm glad I don't have a job. I just do this for my job. I've been talking to the German doctor Manfred Döpp several times about the scientific phenomenon called switching of the brain, which is really isolating or separating the 2 brain hemispheres, so that people are, you can say, locked in the left brain and really cannot think coherently.
Right.
And what we have been discussing and you have been talking about here for 2 days now, you know, that's too much for most people, because their brain is simply not functioning anymore. So they cannot, they don't have the full picture. They cannot understand how things hang together. So we have showed them these switching exercises where you massage your ears and your eyebrows and do this to reconnect.
Yeah.
But as Dr. Döpp has said more times, he actually said it in 2008, he said, it's too late. We have not done our work good enough. He says the industry will just explode now, and they have already accepted it.
Yeah.
But he says the challenge really is that many of the connections inside the brain have been destroyed.
Yeah.
And will not be restored. Can you add a little to, because you know a lot about the brain and what's going on?
Yes and yes. I think one of the discs that you're going to copy, I think in 1998, I sat down with all the research papers on the brain and the body. You'll like this. I sat down for weeks with all the research papers on the brain and the body. And I, what we call, joined the dots. I joined the dots. This research paper went into this research paper, and I could put the 2 together, and then I could put 3 together. And I did a big diagram showing that if you affect one part of the brain, how all of the other parts and what they do will also be affected, and you've got that in a big diagram.
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah. And then I went into the body and I said, well, if the brain is affected and it goes to the hypothalamus and then it goes into the spine, now we're looking at all the exits from the spine, and I looked at the same with all the other papers coming down through the body. So in fact the drawing I've given you there in those, on those discs, of the brain and the body, you could put the two together. In fact you could even do, if you wanted, to copy it and do a big, everything I write is copyright free, everything. You could copy it, do it neatly, and put it on a diagram of a body if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And say, here you are, this is what's happening inside your body. But I've done everything right the way from the head to the toes, and it's on two big diagrams, and you can put them onto A4 or whatever, and just use them. You can sell them if you want to. Makes no difference to me.
Yeah, we just have to get it out.
Yeah, but you can do a big diagram and just maybe a big one and video it.
Yeah.
On a body, on a sort of an outline of a body, just video it for people to look at.
Or we can find a woman that wants to be body painted, and then we can write it on her body and everything. That, they will like that.
A lot of words there.
Yeah.
But I think I probably referenced 60 up-to-date papers at the time.
Yeah. And you know, when we talk about coherent thinking, in reference to what you just said, you know, when I burned out in 2002 completely.
Yeah.
I had 2 deck phones on my desk.
Mm.
I had 2 big Sony screens, you know, the use.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of electromagnetic fields going on in front of me. And I burned completely out. I didn't know why, because I was not stressed, but then I found out the pulses and all this.
Yep.
And often I say to people, because they say, oh, I need proof for this and this, and I say, well, you have the proof inside. You just have to feel inside and listen to yourself. Because when someone presents something for me, and they say, well, they say that this is not safe, I'll say, well, okay, where can I find out about that? And I'll look into that, and then I'll ask myself, well, if there's just a tiny risk that this might not be very safe, I don't use it, I don't eat it. You know, I don't need to study 100 papers to convince myself. We always have to listen to ourselves if we can.
There is proof, actually. Apart from all the scientific documents and the government saying this causes cancer, there is proof. There are, to date, to my knowledge, 5 High Court cases which have been brought by unions, which have proved that mobile phones cause brain tumour and that cell towers cause microwave sickness, leukemia and cancer. There is proof. And it's on the documents you've got. There are 5 High Court cases, all within Europe. European High Court judges have found the industry to cause cancer. So 5. There are 19 other legal judgments, not High Court, a magistrate, a mayor, somebody saying this has caused this, take it down. There are 19 of those, so there are 24 legal judgments against the industry, and there are 14 epidemiological studies proving they cause cancer. So you've got 14 studies and 24 legal judgments, which is 38 documents proving it.
But that's not enough, you know. That's also where I talk about people must be controlled or programmed or just disconnected, because even though you come with the proof, they say, no, this is not good enough for me. And I tell people, well, I'm not a scientist. I use my intuition, my feeling, and my common sense. And most people cannot read scientific documents, so they they have to listen to people like you and Ole Johansen and others who are really sincere and have an ethical backbone. You know, that's the whole.
I can remember when I was 5, I can remember my teacher coming into my classroom, smoking a pipe, sitting down, saying, we had a king then, saying the king has just encouraged everybody to have smoking parties. So when you grow up, we want you to have smoking parties like the king has. and the only sweets at the end of the war that we could find in sweet shops were sweet cigarettes from the cigarette industry, sugar. They were white sugar sticks with a red end, and as children, 5 and 6 years old, we could pretend we were smoking and have smoking parties, which the king told us to do. And the teachers smoked in the classrooms, and that went right on until 70s, 80s, 40 years. And they knew then what tobacco did. And it's the same, governments do cover up things. They covered up cholera, they covered up smoking. There are lots of things governments cover up because it's more convenient to let people suffer. It saves them money. In fact, a brilliant paper was written by the lady who, Alison somebody, or Miss Alison, who found out, because I didn't know this at the time, but pregnant women were x-rayed, and she found the x-rays were causing damage, and the government denied it for 20 years. And it took her 20 years to get the governments to agree that x-raying the fetus caused damage. So they will cover things up for many, many years, decades, the governments.
And then they switch government, of course, and
they switch government, switch people, yeah.
And then no one has a responsibility. So
well, this is it. There is no responsibility.
No.
There's no responsibility for this, because if there's a triangle, the industry have a permit to make these things and put them out by the government.
Yeah.
The government ask the government scientists, and they say you will not get too warm, you can use it. So you have the government scientists who are asked by the industry only to look at heat, and the government only to look at heat. So you end up in a triangle, and they will pass you from one to the other until you get fed up. But you cannot penetrate that ring.
No. The silent weapons for a quiet war, that was a document found in a photocopier in '86. That really is a document from the so-called elite, what they're doing.
Yeah.
But what I've been, with the microwave detector, from London company, it's just so interesting to measure when you are in an electrosmog field or when you are outside in nature, because you can really hear the difference and feel the difference also.
Yeah. Sensory perspectives, it's called,
But on page 10, where it just sums up what it all says, it talks about the vitality, the document here. I said people are losing vitality, energy and health. We see that all over. Options, people are being told what to do, they're being told what to think. Is it information warfare, you can say? Mobility. People don't seem very mobile today, though they have a mobile. They actually seem like they are immobile. And manipulation, well, the wireless society manipulates on all levels. That you have confirmed for 2 days now. And then we have the physical, of course we have all the physical illnesses, we have the mental illnesses, we have all the emotional problems. You talked about the hormonal systems in women. Actually, when we talk about women, and this is not to be sexist as well, because I find women very attractive and have so much to give. Normally they have so much love to give. But what I see with the radiation coming up and going up everywhere is that the hormones must be in total chaos.
Oh, yeah,
because
absolutely.
The reactions are so strange.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are changing the behaviour of countries with this. This industry is changing the behaviour of countries. And that's all we need to say about this. It is changing the behaviour.
Yeah. Of course, I call it an attack upon the human values, human decency, and the whole humanness, you can say. And normally, when I mention the spiritual part of the human being, and Denmark say, "Oh, you don't mention that," because we have got so far away from the spiritual and God in Denmark. So, But we are really being disconnected from our true essence, from being what we truly are. We are having a conversation here. That's to be human. That's listening to each other. We don't have to agree, but we can accept each other no matter what we say.
You're right. And funny enough, there's a little girl lives just a couple of doors up the road here. She's what, 14, 15, and her mother works in the supermarket. And I was in the supermarket, and her mother, and I went up to the till where her mother is, and I said, do you know, I said, and I mentioned this to Linda, I said, I haven't seen your daughter for a year, and she lives 2 doors up. I said, I haven't seen her for a year. And I was joking, and I said, we think you've sold her into slavery. And she laughed, but I still haven't seen her. And some of the little ones, she's got a smaller brother and sister, and they were coming around with Christmas cards. And I said, where's your sister? I said, I haven't seen her. I said, is she at a college or somewhere now? They said, no. They said she comes straight home from school and goes straight onto the computer and sits there all the time on the computer. So children don't interact at all. Now, they come straight home, they go onto the computer, onto Facebook or something, and then it's bedtime, and they'll maybe sneak under the covers with some microwave device, but they don't interact. And now, who was it? A child, apparently I'm a retard.
Me too.
I'm a retard because whenever I want to communicate, I use a landline telephone, or I write letters with a fountain pen and ink. And a child was talking about computers and being up to date. And somebody said on the radio to the child, you know, have you ever written a letter with a pen and ink? And he said, this boy said, no. He said, letters are for retards. You know, like you're so backward, you know, if you write letters.
Yeah.
So it's, the whole thing is now electronically communicating, and children just go home and they disappear. You know, they don't go out to play.
Yeah.
They don't go out to play, they just go to their room and play on computers. They don't get any fresh air, they don't get any exercise. And it's been said on the radio, do you want to go in the garden, Scooby? I'll let you out in a minute. It's been said on the radio that this is probably the first generation of children that are going to die before their parents, for lack of exercise, lack of the ability to communicate. They don't know how to write letters, they don't know how to hold a conversation, they don't know how to go out and play. Everything now is electrical, it is in their room, they are deliberately microwaving themselves. And it's been said on the radio, this may be the first generation that will die before their parents for overweight, irradiation, everything.
You can say the indoor generation of children just being stuck with the computer, Facebook and whatever. You know, this was there was a print in a Danish newspaper in 2010 saying that multitasking will stress your child. And it says that constant use of mobile phones, emails, social medias like Facebook can stimulate your child too much. And the consequences can be stress, ADHD.
Yep.
And the Danish teacher union here says that more and more students who are not able to go into depth, or how to say, to really engage with the materials and to concentrate. And the teacher union I contacted in 2003, and ever since, and they never responded. But you know, they use this SMS language where they write. I never send an SMS. I don't know how to do it. But I asked someone when they write in an email, they write LOL, and they write it behind, and I said, what does that mean? And they say laughing out loud. And I said, well, okay. You know, when I write an email, I write it as a letter, so I write dear, but others they write like it's like we have been changed, like you said. It's like people have become very mediocre in a way in the way they communicate.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the emails. It's I actually think that you could say computers, they are fixating our brains. It's actually part of the programming, you can say, because we think in a certain way, and you can say our spirit is becoming disconnected by too much use of computer, because we lose our normal ability, you said, to write a letter. You know, I write a lot. You see my book here, and when I'm at home, I had like A4 papers.
Yeah.
And I write and I draw and I arrows and whatever together, because it brings the whole brain in function. And what I see today, and that's really what I find very scary, is that so many children, youngsters, but all people, not the elder generation, but the elder generation is still connected to what it is to be a real human being. But I see them as empty vessels. And Pope Benedict, he said in 2005 that people will end up in spiritual barrenness with emptiness of heart. Is that where we are?
I think he's right.
Yeah.
I think he's right.
But he's just describing the agenda, perhaps.
Yeah. Yep, I think he's right. Yeah.
And yeah. I wanted to ask Professor Ole Johansson about a question last time we met, but we didn't have time, or he didn't want to go into it.
What's the question?
The question is really, the wireless revolution, is it the second fall of man? You know, it seems like we have, in 20, 30 years, we have lost what have taken perhaps hundreds of thousands of years in development. It seems like we have been set back or degraded or become less than we are.
Only if we fail in our attempt to educate people.
Yeah.
And I think, you see, I think we will come to a time when people will realise, because with all of their power and all of their money and all of their lawyers, there is one thing this industry cannot do, and only one. They cannot stop people dying. And sooner or later, when enough children have got leukemia, when enough people have died, when enough people have become sick, like smoking, people are going to say, hang on, we've been lied to all this time. Let's turn against the industry. And I think that will happen. And I also think that the industry are preparing for this, because I know they are working on new systems for phones and Wi-Fi's that do not use microwaves. They're using light, which doesn't have the same effect with the body. So I think they are secretly preparing for this anyway. But there will be a time, I think, when people realise, you know, that enough is enough, and they will turn against it. And as you say, we will have changed governments, and all the guilty people will be living somewhere very, very rich and enjoying their lives. But I think because they can't stop people dying, that will be their downfall.
I talked to a company here in the UK, and they are doing something with heating stuff and so. And they were advising a mobile phone company in the UK, where the managing director, he said, well, we know it's dangerous, but we have to find a way to implement something so it will become less dangerous in the phones. And then he said, well, if there comes a mobile phone tower next to the school of my children will be taken out of that school.
Oh yeah.
The managing director of this mobile phone company said.
Yeah, I mean, you've only got to look in the small print in the back of the manual that comes with every phone. And it says, keep away if you are pregnant. Do not hold it next to the body. Hold it away. Make calls as short as possible. If it's a long call, use a landline. Some experiments have shown cancer. All of this is in the manual at the back. People don't read it.
Even the insurance companies, they have started putting in the policies.
They started that years ago.
Yeah, with little letters that if your illness can be linked to electromagnetic fields, there's no coverage.
No, they put that in. That was the Lloyd's started that. In the year 2000, I think, 2001.
Yeah.
Lloyd's, followed by Swiss Re, followed by another very, very big one, who did its own research and found they caused cancer. And the insurance companies won't touch it.
No, they will, especially not touch if it's something to do with mobile phones.
No.
But I'm talking about private insurances for your own health.
Yeah.
They also put it in now.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And this is why I think if we get to court in America and children have already been made sick from this, and the decision makers don't realise this, is that if there is no insurance and you are the decision maker, I take you to court and I will have your house and I will have your car and I will have your land, and you don't realise that. We have a case here that I know of where a farmer is being sued for £5.2 million when he had a transmitter on the end of his farm and it made people ill in the surrounding houses, and they are taking the farmer to court. There is another one I know of where councillors did not follow the law, and we had leukemia clusters around a transmitter, and the councillors are being taken to court, and there is no insurance. And these people, if they lose, they will lose everything they've stood for. The same with this case in America. There is no insurance, and if the school is found guilty, then the school insurance won't touch it, and it will be the people who signed the document and authorised it to come in, they will be sued, and they will lose everything.
So actually we should recommend all people who are interested in these fields to actually find out where the mobile phone towers are, start to find out what kind of illnesses people are having around, and then even if it's a building with 10 apartments, for instance in Copenhagen, then sue the 10 apartments because they have signed, someone has signed it to go on the private building.
You can't take the industry to court, it's too powerful.
Yeah.
You can take an individual.
Yeah.
You can take them to court.
Yeah, we had a school in Denmark where there's a mobile phone tower in the middle of the school, and in 2003 I wrote the mayor of that city. I happened to know the mayor because I went to school with his daughter, and my father used to be an insurance agent in that city, so I was known in that area. And he said in 2003 that mobile phone tower needs to go no matter if it costs us money, it just has to go. And 8 years after, it's still in the middle of the school, of course, because he's from the Liberal Party and they just talk, they just work. Okay, that mast has been there for 8 years now, extra than the mayor said it has to go because there were uncertainty about the health risks.
Yeah.
And that means actually the people living around there really have a very good argument because the mayor actually said that it had to go.
The problem is when you sign, and people don't realise this, when you sign to have a transmitter on your land, like our farmer that's being sued, you sign to take responsibility for it, all of its health problems. So the industry are totally clear. You sign to say you take responsibility for it because you're taking money to have it on your land.
Yeah.
You take responsibility for all of the legal documents that are thrown at you.
But people don't know that.
No,
they just sign because they get the money.
Yeah, and you can, for instance, the farmer here can be sued for the ill health. You can also take the people to court if your property is devalued. So if somebody put a transmitter up outside your house and the value goes, you can take the company to court because they have devalued your property.
And I also mean that I wanted to say is that if you have this mobile phone tower and you say, well, we just knock it down then. We take it down. If the industry don't, then they will give a penalty. A huge penalty. They cannot get out of these contracts. They are 10 years, 15 years, 20 years contracts.
We had one here, a school here. They had a mobile phone tower in the school. They signed for 5 years.
Okay.
At the end of 5 years, they said, it's making children sick. The contract's finished, take it away. And they said, no. They said, you have agreed to have the tower here permanently. You have only agreed to take the money for 5 years. Now, you can take the money if you want for another 5 years and another 5 years, but the tower stays. So you can't actually get the towers taken down. You agree to take the money.
And that's where the tricky part comes in,
and
where you take the money.
And if you decide you want to break the contract, they will charge you all of the money they would have paid for that. Once you've signed the contract, and this is what I find the problem with some of the countries that I visit, when you have one person who says, I will allow all of these in, and you sign the contract, the cost of breaking the contract is absolutely phenomenal. Because they will say, well look, we would have made all of this money and all of this, and you've broken the contract, we are going to sue your country for however many billions.
And they bring all their lawyers.
Oh, one of the court cases I was in, they turned up with a Land Rover, a long wheelbase Land Rover of lawyers. The second Land Rover had the documents. A Land Rover of lawyers. I mean, they're very powerful. And you, when you sign this, you have no idea what you're signing.
But I always thought about, okay, if it is so safe as they try to convince people about, why then pay them money to have it on the buildings? When the money part comes in, that says this is mammon. This is really to make people interested in getting it, not thinking further ahead.
The industry has a policy. It targets the poor or the people who need money. In many countries, the biggest transmitters go up in the poorest areas because they don't have the ability to fight. I've lost my train of thought now.
No, it's the poor or the one who needs money.
The poor, the one that needs money. Schools, they will say, go to a school and say, look, we will give you £20,000–30,000 a year. You can buy books, chairs, whatever. It's only radio waves. They're quite harmless. So you go to schools who need money, universities that need money, colleges need money. So they will only target people who are poor or churches. They will target the poor or buildings that need lots and lots of money.
Yeah, or tall buildings or buildings placed the right place for the right mast and so on. But that's very important.
They go to the poor. Because the poor will say, oh, we could do with £20,000–30,000. 10-year contract, £250,000, we'll have that.
Yeah, and a building block with 10 apartments, they say, oh, then we can have a new playground in the, and they always get free, they also get free internet, and they get free mobile phones. They are really bribing them in Denmark. They are getting so much.
To me, it looks like before they move in, they send a team of people. They always seem to get the cancer charity with donations. So you've got the cancer charity on your side. Which means that the official cancer figures will be manipulated. You get the government on your side, you get anybody like the radiation watchdogs on your side, and then nobody can argue at all. Once you've got the people and the figures that you want, Nobody can argue.
In Denmark, when they sold the licenses for 3G, the state got about, let's say that must have been 380 million pounds, just to give the industry the right to use these frequencies. And how come so much money? You know, someone is being paid there.
Oh yeah, it's all money and it's greed, and somebody will be making a lot of private money as well. And this is what it is. They are taking money for killing people.
So I know we're not allowed to say it, but you know, it's God or Mammon, and they choose Mammon, and we need to come back to the right way where we start. You know, money should only be a means to create things and to do good things, and it should not be a value because it isn't a value or it isn't a goal. It's just to do something. Okay.
In my mind, they are taking money to kill people, and in fact they're killing children. They are taking money to kill children and give women breast cancer.
And that again, the Cancer Institute benefits from when they have to do the mammography and everything.
Well, the Cancer Institutes benefit because people, you see it on adverts on television. You say, oh, lots of people are getting cancer, donate so we can do research. And the cancer charities benefit with more cancers, the drug companies benefit.
The bankers benefit.
The bankers benefit.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of money to be made out of human suffering. And this is what they're doing.
About ethics.
Oh, ethics.
You know, in 2009, you know, I've been doing this in 2003, and I had to summarize it up somehow.
Right.
And I made a document in Danish called The Ethical Timeline, where I said what had happened since 2001 until 2009.
Right.
And in this document, I keep coming, you know, we have the right to defend ourselves if we are being invaded. If someone is coming into this house with a shotgun now and threatening to shoot you, I can do something to prevent that. That's our right to defend ourselves. Here we are being invaded, attacked by something that comes through the walls, through our skulls, into our children. We have the right to defend ourselves, actually.
Yes, quite true.
And what I encourage people to in this document is original 50 pages in Denmark, then I made a little appetizer for people in 7 pages, is really, we need to take self-responsibility, because it's not coming from government, it's not coming from Cancer Institute, it's not coming from outside. We need to take the responsibility ourselves to look at our phones we give to our little children and say, as long as we don't have any security about what this does, it makes us ill, of course, and kills us. We have to remove it. We are the power, because we are 7 billion people or 6 billion or how many we are. If people stop using mobile phones, if they stop buying all these things, it's very vulnerable. The industry will collapse fast, because they are only built on more increase. And as soon as that increase tips over, it goes very fast backwards.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So it's all about responsibility, but how can we make people take that responsibility? We have all been conditioned that it's government and a healthcare system that will take care of us, but we see today that they don't.
Yeah, you can't. In order to do that, you would need to get an organisation like the BBC to make programmes about how dangerous these things are. Now, the BBC doesn't answer to anyone other than government. And the people at the very, very top, nobody knows what industries they belong to. They are secrets of the BBC. They are secret. Nobody knows what industries they represent, what boards they sit on. I mean, when we have a corrupt government, as we've had, probably our most corrupt government ever, and the BBC needs the government, there hasn't been a single programme within, or many, many, many years from the BBC about this. Not one. I know I am on a banned list from the BBC. because sometimes there are radio programs and I ring up and say, you know, you're wrong here because of this. My letters, my comments are never ever read out. And I've been told the BBC has a blacklist of people it must not communicate with. Hence, when I said yesterday, when David Attenborough wrote to me and said, contact Neil Nightingale, I wrote 3 times and I phoned twice, nothing. You know, they will not talk to me. So
yeah.
when you have an organisation like the BBC blocking the information going out, there is nothing else you can do. And you have the papers, the big papers that take all the advertising from
yeah.
the industry.
Yeah.
Now, I am one story on one day. Mobile phones will kill your children.
Yeah.
One story on one day. The advertising is every single day forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And they make millions from this.
Yeah.
So until you get the media on your side, the only thing you can do, the only thing I can do is what I'm doing now, is work every day, answering questions, writing letters, seeing people like yourself.
Yeah.
I know I'm on the internet, but people probably wouldn't bother to look at it anyway. The parents themselves in this country, in some cases, are bullied by their children. The children want the next phone, and they bully their parents to get the next phone. And the children will use their phones.
But there, I have called for, in Denmark, you know, I've contacted, like, we have, it's called the national TV, like BBC in Denmark, and I've sent DVDs for 50 of the top people in summer. No response.
No,
of course, I'm also on some kind of list, so perhaps just use another name in the future. That's easy, you know, just write another name, then you're another person.
But, I mean, the BBC won't do anything against the industry.
No.
Because they make a lot of money from the industry.
Yeah. But parents, you know, I know they are bullied, and they also have a law, I guess, in England, as in Denmark, that if children are complaining about their parents, you know, the parents can get in trouble. It's the Nazi paragraph or something like that. But, you know, parents, they should really stretch their backbone a little bit and then add a little more ethics to that one. Because, you know, what will parents say in 10, 20, 30 years when they have a child that's in the grave? Or when they have a child who's in an Alzheimer home?
That's when, as I said, the one thing the industry cannot do is stop people dying.
Yeah.
Now, how many children will have to die before the parents suddenly say, well, hang on, there were 1,000 people in this school, and 300 of them have now died of leukemia.
Within 2 months.
And we've got a transmitter here. And they start then, but it won't be until then, because parents are too busy. Both of them work, they're very tired, they can't take on their children, they can't take on the industry.
Yeah.
There's nowhere in this country, there is nowhere for a parent to complain to. I'm seeing at the moment the Minister of Schools on behalf of a parent, and the Minister has said, I can't do anything. He said that, I cannot do a thing to get Wi-Fi out of schools, and he's the Minister of Schools.
Yeah.
So
they have no power.
They're just puppets. And that's where it finishes. You know. So what can you do next?
Yeah, the challenge is really what I see in Denmark with all the people I communicate with and the ones who have children. Some have even told me most are not. They're not being honest. They talk a lot, but when it comes to action, there's no action.
Yeah.
But they are really afraid. They are afraid because what will the other parents talk about them? What will the school board say? Will their children be bullied because the parents want to have this Wi-Fi? You know, they are afraid of what other people might think about them, their own reputation and so. And I say, this is about the future generations. This is about your own children. It doesn't matter what other people think, because this is the most precious we got.
Oh yeah, we are going to destroy a generation.
Or more.
Or more, yeah. We are going to cause illness and suffering right across the world for not just this generation, the next one and the next one. The repercussions of this, as I said yesterday, the whole of the female line will have this until there are no more females in that line. So this this will go on now maybe for 20, 40, 60 years, the damage we're doing today. You know, in 60 years' time, genetically damaged girls will be born from the damage caused today.
There was a movie coming out in 2007 called The Children of Men. It was a British movie, and it was playing out a scenario in 2027 where the youngest person on planet Earth dies 18 years old, and that means 2009. Actually, the scenario is almost mirroring the microwave story here, but it's another time. But it was actually quite scary because they were protecting this black woman who was pregnant.
Yeah.
And it was like they were having a war over her because she was carrying the key, actually, to having new babies coming.
Yeah. In 60 years' time, maybe 80 years' time, this will still be causing problems, but the people will have made their money. They will have lived in their big houses with their Rolls Royces and their yachts, and they don't care. And that is the problem that we have. And it's down to people like you and I to try and educate. And maybe with these two court cases, but I have had some success. I know when I was in Canada, I gave, I think it was 23 television, radio, and I was exhausted, press interviews, and I have heard that the school I went out to represent, Collingwood School, they have now taken Wi-Fi out of that one school. So we won that battle. But the next schools, the parents have now said, well, hang on a minute, if it's dangerous there, it's dangerous here. And they are taking their Wi-Fi out. So it's going...
The ball has started to roll.
The ball has started to roll in Canada.
Yeah.
It's started to roll in France, not just because of me. I spoke to a lot of French experts.
But all together. We're all working like...
And it's rolling in France.
Yeah.
So we are getting countries now doing this. And this is the way to go, I think. I've got the court case in America. And if I can get all of the Wi-Fi whipped out of American schools, then the rest of the world will look and say, well, hang on. So there is a way to beat this industry. And
that's the right intention, and you got the spirit.
Oh yeah, I shall just plod on.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time, Barrie. It's been really a pleasure meeting you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.